Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. Can you please take your seats? Plenary session 1 is about to start right now. Thank you. This plenary session is the first plenary session, and we have a number of experts, prominent politicians, and UN officials here to talk about one of the core objectives of the United Nations Alliance of Civilizations, and that is the promotion of interreligious and intercultural dialogue as a tool for conflict prevention and post-conflict peace building. I would like to welcome our prominent speakers, His Excellency Mr. José Luis Rodríguez Zapatero, the former Prime Minister of Spain. He is going to be our keynote speaker for this session. His Excellency Mr. Danilo Turk, the former President of the Republic of Slovenia, and His Excellency Kevin Rudd, former Prime Minister of Australia, His Excellency Mr. Amr Moussa, former Secretary General of the League of Arab States, and Her Excellency Ms. Ana Maria Menendez, Under Secretary General for the UN Secretary General Senior Advisor on Policy. Please join me in welcoming our distinguished speakers. As I said earlier, the promotion of intercultural and interreligious dialogue is the core of the work of the United Nations Alliance of Civilizations. UNAOC promotes dialogue as a soft power tool to prevent violence and conflict, as well as build and sustain peace by creating bridges among diverse communities and people from different identity groups. It has developed a solid expertise. We work very closely with the civil society organizations, with youth-led organizations and individual youth, and we have expanded the work that we do with faith-based organizations and with religious leaders. We are very proud of the work that we have achieved over the past 6 years, and we are very proud as well of the work that the United Nations Alliance of Civilizations in general has achieved in the past 14 years. I would like to welcome and to the lectern our first keynote speaker, His Excellency Mr. José Luis Rodríguez Zapatero, the former Prime Minister of Spain. But before he takes the floor, actually I would like to say a few words, because Prime Minister Zapatero in particular is the godfather of the United Nations Alliance of Civilizations. At least we think of him as such at the United Nations Alliance of Civilizations. The Alliance of Civilization idea was his brainchild, as we said. And I was told, and in my readings, I read that Mr. Zapatero came up with this idea when he was flying across the Atlantic and actually coming to New York City. And he had this idea, and he said, well, I'm going to be presenting this idea as I'm going to be speaking at the General Assembly, and I'm going to be proposing the initiative, and he will see how member states are going to be reacting to that. Well, I would like to invite him, without any further ado, I would like to invite him to the lectern to give us his keynote address and tell us about the initiative of the Alliance of Civilization, which he launched more than 14 years ago. The floor is yours.
Muchísimas gracias. Deseo que mis primeras palabras sean para felicitar y agradecer al alto representante de la Alianza, a Nasir Abdulaziz Al-Ser, por su trabajo, por su tarea, por su apoyo, por esta invitación y por mantener viva esta empresa de paz que es la Alianza de Civilizaciones. Este proyecto es un proyecto de convicciones profundas. La gran convicción es que la paz es la tarea La gran convicción es que la civilización construida en defensa de la libertad, del entendimiento, de la convivencia, tiene como gran tarea la paz general liderada por Naciones Unidas, la paz general en el mundo. No podemos esperar a que sea la inteligencia artificial la que nos diga cuál es el camino a la paz. Tiene que ser la inteligencia, los sentimientos, el carácter de los seres humanos los que nos lleven a una paz general. Esas convicciones conviene que sean repetidas, sentidas y llevadas a cada rincón de los ámbitos sociales, políticos de cada país. Ninguna fe, ninguna creencia, ningún Dios puede servir para amparar o legitimar la violencia. La pluralidad cultural y religiosa, la diversidad, no es una enfermedad, es riqueza, es abundancia. No hay política ni en la violencia, ni en el terrorismo, ni en el odio. Matar nunca es defender una idea, es simplemente matar. No hay herejes, sencillamente hay personas con otras creencias. No hay ninguna religión, ninguna cultura, ninguna civilización superior a otra. La historia nos muestra que todas las civilizaciones han tenido momentos de esplendor y de decadencia. Y todos los países. Y precisamente aquellas civilizaciones que atraviesan un momento de esplendor son las llamadas a la comprensión, a la tarea del reconocimiento, a la generosidad, no solo económica, sino también política y moral, que en eso consiste acercarse al otro, al diferente, al que tiene otra religión, otra cultura, otra historia. Acercarse con generosidad, acercarse con empatía y acercarse demostrando que no piensa que es superior a él, sino simplemente distinto. En la alianza de civilizaciones está impresa una palabra que en castellano, que en español tiene una gran fuerza. Es la humildad. La humildad es necesaria para la convivencia. Es la esencia de la convivencia. La humildad nos lleva a pensar que no es la verdad la que nos hace libres. Es la libertad la que nos hace verdaderos. Verdaderos, cada uno en su expresión, en su forma de ver el mundo, de entender la relación social, pero siempre con esa voluntad de entender, de unir, de compartir. La Alianza de Civilizaciones es una institución joven. No ocupa grandes titulares en los medios de comunicación, pero ocupa los corazones de mucha gente de buena fe. En todo el mundo, en todos los países, en todas las culturas, en todas las civilizaciones. Y por eso sabemos que es un proyecto a largo plazo para hacer de la paz, de la convivencia, del entendimiento, de la unión, el gran leitmotiv del siglo XXI. La Alianza ha trabajado en campos esenciales extendiendo esos valores a la juventud, haciendo que los compartan, preocupándose por la inmigración, centrándose en los medios de comunicación y haciendo una llamada a las confesiones religiosas. Esenciales, porque en casi todas las civilizaciones hay una religión que influye, que explica la historia, que construye sentimientos, actitudes. Y las religiones no pueden estar al margen de la gran tarea de la paz y de la convivencia. La religión tiene una vocación de trascendencia, pero como nuestras vidas queremos que cuenten también en la existencia, queremos que las religiones se comprometan activamente en favor de la paz del día a día, no de la paz de otro reino solo, de la paz del día a día. Por ello, considero que la Alianza de Civilizaciones debía de promover un Consejo de las Religiones en Naciones Unidas. Un Consejo de las Religiones que juntos, dialogando, dieran ideas en favor de la paz y de la convivencia. Considero que la Alianza de Civilizaciones podía ser un gran actor, ofrecerse al secretario general del Consejo de Seguridad para tareas de mediación en conflictos. Una institución de hombres y mujeres de buena fe. Una institución que engloba religiones diversas, civilizaciones amplias, culturas. Ese crisol puede ser un buen faro que ilumine la solución de conflictos. Y no solo lo que a veces son las herramientas convencionales de gobiernos o de fundaciones. Una nueva mirada. La Alianza de Civilizaciones es una alianza de instituciones y de sociedad. La sociedad civil juega un papel determinante, tiene el liderazgo y por ello debo de pedir a los gobiernos que apoyen más, a los gobiernos del Grupo de Amigos de la Alianza, que apoyen más este proyecto. Debo pedir a los países de Naciones Unidas, al secretario general, que ya lo hace y lo viene haciendo, que fortalezca el potencial de la alianza. Esta es una apuesta de futuro segura y ganadora, porque cada vez con más fuerza. Aquellos que han sufrido la violencia, aquellos que la defienden o la justifican, verán avanzar los grandes valores de la convivencia. La historia no nos da muchos motivos para sentirnos orgullosos de nosotros mismos como civilización. Uno de los motivos que nos da para sentirnos orgullosos es la existencia de Naciones Unidas. La existencia de Naciones Unidas. La Alianza de Civilizaciones es un hijo de la idea de las Naciones Unidas. Nacida para una paz general y para ayudar. Fueron España y Turquía, secretario de Estado, antes lo recordaba, gracias. Fueron España y Turquía quienes patrocinamos en su momento la Alianza de Civilizaciones. Piensen en España y en Turquía, unidos de la mano. Piensen en dos países con una honda tradición cultural, en dos países cruzados de culturas, de civilizaciones, de religiones. Piensen en dos países con dos religiones mayoritarias distintas, a veces enfrentadas o distantes, y que concurrimos ante el mundo del brazo para decir historias distintas, continentes distintos, en gran medida, religiones distintas, pero un sentimiento de unidad en favor de la paz y del entendimiento. Más de 10 años de la Alianza de Civilizaciones, podemos sentirnos satisfechos. Quiero felicitar a todos los secretarios generales que la han apoyado y, por supuesto, a los altos representantes que la han liderado. Y decir a todos los que están aquí, ustedes están compartiendo una buena tarea. Ustedes están aportando algo de su vida importante, de esas cosas que a lo largo del tiempo y de los años quedan aquí. Es el patrimonio mejor que uno puede legar, la mejor herencia. Decir que levantó su voz, sus ideas, su mirada de manera activa para compartir, para convivir, para luchar y evitar el sufrimiento, el dolor más horrible, más absurdo que pueda haber, que es el dolor por no tener la religión, la idea o la cultura de otros que quieren imponerla. La alianza está viva y fuerte. Las civilizaciones serán más civilización si se unen y si comprenden o comprendemos que haber nacido en un sitio, haber sido educado en una religión, tener un color de piel diferente, es un hecho de muy poca trascendencia frente a lo que representa el destino como especie, como civilización y como seres humanos. Adelante con la alianza y gracias, alto representante.
Thank you. Well, no doubt that you are the brainchild of the United Nations Alliance of Civilization with such inspirational words. And we continue to learn from you, and we continue to build on your ideas to make the United Nations Alliance of Civilizations even stronger. The takeaways from His Excellency Mr. Zapatero's speech is the word that I learned today, and I think it's a very inspiring word, is humildad. In Spanish means humility, and of course humility we added to our dictionary of words and terminology of words that we use at the United Nations Alliance of Civilizations, because our motto, as you know, Your Excellency, is many cultures, one humanity. So we add to that humility as well, humildad. So thank you very much, and I'll get back to you. I took some notes, and I think I will be asking you some questions to follow up on few of the ideas that you have presented to us here. I would like to call and invite to the floor His Excellency Mr. President Danilo Turk, the former president of the Republic of Slovenia. His Excellency served as president of the Republic of Slovenia from 2007 to 2012. He was the first Slovenian permanent representative to the United Nations and served as a non-permanent member of the Security Council as well as member of the Human Rights Committee. So he is no stranger to the work of the United Nations, because in addition to that, President Turk was also appointed by the late Secretary General Kofi Annan in the year 2000 as an Assistant Secretary General for Political Affairs. Please, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Thank you for giving me the floor, and thank you for the invitation. It certainly gives me great pleasure to be with you today and to think about the current and future tasks of the Alliance of Civilizations, one of the initiatives with which I have been closely associated since the beginning. I worked as the Assistant Secretary General for Political Affairs at the time when the alliance was launched. And I remember very well our discussions with Kofi Annan, then Secretary General of the United Nations, with whom we often came to the same conclusion, and that is, Alliance of Civilizations should not be a feel-good organization. It should be a do-good organization. So what do we do to really do good and go beyond feeling good? Because obviously, people of goodwill will quickly agree that diversity is richness. But in order to address the very real problem that the world is facing, we have to go beyond. We have to reach beyond. And therefore, the question which was also mentioned today in the speech of Secretary of State of Venezuela, who referred to one of the early statements of Prime Minister Zapatero, that in fact diversity is richness, but it is something that has to be managed, because diversity can also be a problem. And we should not shy away from recognizing that diversity in today's world is increasingly becoming a problem. So we have to think very seriously about how to do good and what constitutes management that helps making diversity real richness and moves the humanity forward. Now, thinking about the question as formulated, one must think very seriously and very deeply about dialogue as an instrument of communication among people, among communities, including religious communities, and among civilizations. Dialogue can be a formidable instrument of management of diversity, but it has to be conceived well and has to be developed well. And let me use the few minutes that I have at my disposal to offer 4 elements or 4 characteristics of dialogue which I consider to be critical for making dialogue an effective instrument of managing diversity and richness and to do something good. The first principle, in my opinion, is to give space to youth, to give space to young people. Whenever we talk about diversity or about respect, tolerance, and such important values, we come to the conclusion that education is very important. But we seldom go further and ask ourselves, what does education actually entail? And my proposition is that education, in order to be an instrument of dialogue and managing diversity, has to offer real and meaningful voice to young people. And I'm very happy to see that in the preparation of this dialogue today, young people are actively involved.
Yes.
We live in an era of internet, and internet meaning using new tools. And I'm wondering whether we could consider, I'm too old to be, author of this, but simply to ask a question, isn't this the time to develop one or more applications for internet communication on dialogue, on managing diversities, on how young people perceive the real problems of their lives? Let us not forget, youth is also associated with uncertainties, and they have to be raised, and they have to be a matter of dialogue. So giving space to young people and using internet and other instruments that are at disposal today for dialogue, for giving voice, is the principle number 1. Principle number 2, the characteristic number 2, is about management of diversity, is the following. Management is not about quick fixes. And I would add, it's neither about slow fixes. We are not engaging in dialogue in order to fix things overnight or to fix things otherwise. That's the task of diplomacy, that's the task of political processes, but dialogue has to be deeper, and we have to understand the importance of patience, humility, persistence, and growing richness of dialogue. Let me give you an example. A month ago, a regular meeting of the World Congress of Leaders of World Religions took place in Astana, in Kazakhstan. Now, Kazakhstan has been organizing these conferences for 15 years now. They are not very dramatic. They do not seek huge media popularity, but they provide a permanent forum for careful and responsible dialogue among religious leaders. And let us think about the effects, because Kazakhstan and Central Asia more generally have managed to be peaceful places, places characterized by hundreds of ethnic groups, by all major religions of the world, by developmental and political potential for conflict which did not happen. And dialogue was a very major element, a very major instrument in making sure that conflict does not happen. I believe that we meeting today have to appreciate experiences like this and have to learn from them. So management not as an instrument of quick fixes, but as an instrument, dialogue as an instrument of humility, patience, and persistence. Number 3, dialogue, in order to be meaningful and effective instrument of management of diversity, and has to reach also into the religious communities themselves. Let us be honest. All religious communities and all other human communities have problems. And they have to adjust to the changing reality of the world. They have to adjust to social changes. They have to adjust to changes brought by the information revolution, by such phenomena as, in my part of the world, aging of population, and other phenomena of this nature which are different in different other parts of the world. So isn't this time to learn also about how religious communities cope with these problems internally, even without thinking too much about how they would manage their dialogue with other religious communities? Learning about management of these problems within a community can be a formidable force for good and doing good. And this is not a new task. All religious communities are very well of that. I belong to a part of Europe which is largely Catholic, and half a century ago the Catholic Church announced the concept of aggiornamento in Italian, bringing the organization to the modern times. Now this task continues. Nothing has been accomplished definitively. And I believe that the problems that have been encountered, the attempts that have been tried, have to be part of our dialogue as an instrument of management of diversity. And then finally, fourthly, do not avoid difficult questions. We must be prepared to address some of the more difficult questions as well, carefully, responsibly, but also courageously. Let us think about one of such problems which is again typical for the part of the world where I'm coming from, for Europe, the question of integration of immigrants. How does one view that? Obviously, there's a great deal to say about the need for the countries which receive refugees and immigrants, how they should help. And the forthcoming global compact on migration will address much of that. But there are questions which have not been addressed fully as yet. And let me quote a religious leader from Sarajevo, from Bosnia and Herzegovina, from about 2 decades ago, when many Bosnians during the war left their country and went to live in other places, especially in Europe. Mufti of Sarajevo, Mufti Mustafa Ceric, told his compatriots and co-religionists, when you come to the new country, behave in accordance with three principles: obey the law, learn the language, and do something good for your neighbors. Now that was a profound wisdom from the Mufti of Sarajevo, who guided his community, and by guidance helped integration of Bosnians in other societies to be successful. We have seen how these things resonate, how such profound, wise words resonate. In the Council of Europe, these ideas have been given space and have been discussed further. And I believe that our meeting today and other meetings that will follow can follow the same level of ambition to address difficult questions, but with the necessary responsibility and wisdom. Let me conclude by saying this. The Alliance of Civilizations has a very important, I should say, historic task: developing dialogue into a meaningful instrument of management of diversity. And let me repeat, there are at least 4 elements of such a dialogue which have to be given serious thought and pursued to the extent we can. Open the space to the youth, offer a forum for religious leaders to meet and discuss. Thirdly, learn about the discussion within religious communities. And fourthly, carefully address, do not shy away from difficult questions that arise in the process of dialogue. Now, these are my suggestions, ladies and gentlemen. They come as a result of following the work and being participant of the work of the Alliance of Civilizations from the beginning. We have reached the point at which the Alliance of Civilizations has the potential of becoming a major force for good. And as I said at the beginning, it is not about feeling good, it is about doing good. Thank you very much.
Your Excellency, thank you very much, President Danilo Turk. And the takeaway, of course, is it's not about not a feel good, but it's a do good. And those are very wise words, and we keep repeating them as well. And we also echo what you're saying about diversity is richness rather than threat. And there are tools to make others see how diversity can serve all of us as an asset rather than as a threat. We thank you very much. I'll go back to a few points that you have raised. And I'm happy that you have raised those points because they are actually issues that we are addressing here. During this forum, you pointed out to the themes of the other sessions. And yes, we are going to be discussing expanding the youth for space, because expanding the space for youth, because we have already done that and we continue to do that. We are going to be discussing migration-related issues, particularly perception about migrants and refugees. And we are going to be discussing the role of the faith-based organizations and religious leaders in terms of promoting intercultural, interfaith dialogue and promoting the values of tolerance, diversity, and respect of the other. I thank you very much. I would like to invite now His Excellency Mr. Kevin Rudd, who served as Australia's 26th Prime Minister in the years 2007 to 2010 and 2013, and as Foreign Minister in 2010 to 2012. While in office, His Excellency Prime Minister Rudd has led Australia's response to the global financial crisis, reviewed by the IMF as the most effective stimulus strategy for all major economies. On the international stage, his experience in foreign affairs assisted him to pursue numerous major policy achievements. And these include making advances on climate change action, his role in the establishment of the G20, and diplomacy in moving forward and towards an Asia-Pacific community through multilateral bodies. There's a lot, of course, to say about Prime Minister Rudd, but let's hear from him in person. I invite you to the floor, sir.
Thank you very much. We need a new civilizational protocol to reduce the level of introductions. Kevin Rudd, Global Citizen. That's it. It's great this morning to hear of the work of our High Representative and the work which the Alliance has done, and I thank him publicly for it. And also to have listened carefully to what Jose Luis has just said, as well as Danilo Turk. Prime Minister Zapatero came up with a good idea over the Atlantic when he was flying. He will be surprised to know that when he spoke at the UN General Assembly that year, I actually listened. Most of our speeches at the UN General Assembly and the annual session in September are forgotten within 24 hours. It's very interesting that some ideas actually take root. So you should have some satisfaction from this, my Spanish colleague, that you've given birth to something which I think has great potential. Many people in the world today would regard the work we are doing here as completely irrelevant. That is an arrogant view, but if we were to go to the chancelleries of the governments that we come from and the foreign ministries, they would see this as marginal. The truth is they don't see the full picture, because what we're talking about through this alliance is how do we think about each other? When we talk about a dialogue of civilizations, it's when I think of my friend Amir Musa here, what is my perception? What is my deep thinking about what Egyptians are like? And what Muslims are like? What Arabs are like? Or in the case of Prime Minister Zapatero, what the Spaniards are like. And so when we are dealing with these questions of deep civilizational and cultural and religious perception, we are going to the heart of how we behave towards each other as peoples, as countries, and as nations. The fact that it is somewhat intangible does not mean that it is unimportant. In fact, it is highly important what we do here. When you look at how the world community has progressed over the last 100 years, most people would say against the benchmarks of civilization that we have had many failures, some successes, and a long way to go. 100 years ago, we just finished the war to end all wars. That didn't end well. We then ended up within 20 years having an even bigger slaughter where most of us became involved. And there we saw the triumph of ideologies of fascism, of nationalism, and of racism, in particular anti-Semitism, the horror of the Holocaust. And then we learned from that, we thought, when we established this institution, the Parliament of Man, the Parliament of Humankind. And we agreed on the Charter. And 3 years later, we agreed on the Universal Declaration. And in that Universal Declaration of Human Rights of 1948, we have the closest we've ever come to a global code of civic values which unite our cultures and civilizations. It's worth reading the Universal Declaration every morning over breakfast. Well, at least a short version of it, depending how long your breakfast is. Because it reminds us that when Eleanor Roosevelt and her colleagues sat down in 1948, they were reflecting on what we are reflecting on today. Different cultures, different civilizations, what actually brings us together. And so those founding instruments are a profound continuing value. Of course, it didn't last. We then ended up in a Cold War which lasted more than 40 years, based on two radically competing ideologies. And, remarkably, it ended peacefully. Of course, it wasn't all bad through that time. We had decolonisation and finally a recognition on the part of white folks around the world that this Universal Declaration of Human Rights applied to everybody, in Africa and Asia and elsewhere. And so we began the proper emancipation of all peoples. And so this was a good thing. Equality for all human beings. And then in this post-Cold War world in which we now live, we've seen again the emergence of deep notions of nationalism, of populism, of local identity politics, and dare I say it again, of racism and sectarianism, as if the ideological constraints of the Cold War having been lifted, some of these primal negative impulses within peoples and cultures come back to the surface. And so we saw Rwanda, we saw the Balkans, and we've seen so many such tragedies since, including what unfolds today with the Rakhine, Rohingya, and in Myanmar. It's often said that international relations is all about national interests. I don't agree with that, but it's about that in part. I think a clearer view of international relations and where we fit as this alliance of civilizations is to see international relations as being about interests, about values, and how we deal with questions of identity. And the purpose of the dialogue, which Danilo eloquently referred to before, should be to bring us to a point of mutual reflection and, where possible, agreement on each of those things. National interests, they usually speak for themselves, although we often use our diplomacy to try and disguise what they are. But I've got news for the world. Everyone's usually worked it out anyway. On the question of values, however, this is where the core work of the Universal Declaration 48 and the continued work of this alliance becomes so important for the future. My experience after half a lifetime of reflection is that if we sat back and looked at the religious, cultural, and philosophical traditions from which we in this room all come, we would find with objective reflection that on the question of values, there is infinitely more agreement among us than there is disagreement. It doesn't matter whether we come from the Abrahamic faiths, Christianity, Judaism, Islam, or from Buddhist traditions or Confucian traditions or other traditions, or even the Enlightenment traditions of the late 18th century on the questions of the intrinsic dignity of human beings, the equality of human beings, fairness and concepts of justice, but in addition to that, our view that we have a responsibility also to respond to the wonder of the cosmos and creation by doing something to preserve the creation in a sustainable fashion. If we took away the language and the symbols of our different cultural and civilization and religious traditions and dug beneath it to see what lies there, there is a huge commonality among us. If we have the respect towards one another, and as my Spanish colleague said before, the humility towards one another to understand that. This for me is so important. If we begin to do that, we begin psychologically to dismantle so many of the silent barriers between us. The final point I make is about identity. This has become a difficult, divisive, and almost ugly word in the decade in which we live. We can see each day how identity politics and populist politics and ethnocentric politics and even nationalist politics is used and abused around the world today. The truth is, we are dealing with questions of deep emotional and cultural self-identification. We ask ourselves this: am I first and foremost a citizen of my community? Am I first and foremost in my identity an adherent of my religion? Am I first and foremost a member of my nation or my country? Am I first and foremost a global citizen? The truth is, we are all these things. And the question through this dialogue of civilizations is through a process of humility and mutual respect and dialogue can we actually see that there is a way in which we can develop our concepts of common identity and identity towards each other's, which becomes positive rather than negative. You see, in everyone's concept of identity, doesn't matter what culture they come from, when we reflect on it, there is a place in our minds for how we treat others, how we treat strangers, and that within our cultures, our identity is in fact enhanced as individuals and as cultures by how kind we are in dealing with others who are strangers in our midst. It's in Christianity, it's in Islam, it's in Buddhism, it's in most rational and secular philosophies as well. To conclude on this, when I think therefore of this alliance's future work, and its important work, on these, quote, soft questions of international relations, they are in fact the hardest questions, those of values and those of identity, in addition to the matters of national interest which are debated in other chambers within this great hall of the United Nations. I'm a student of Chinese language and history and culture, and I've lived and worked in China for a large part of my life. The Chinese have a word which I find useful. It is the word siwei. Siwei means the way we think, our way of thinking, in particular the way we think about others. And the question for us is, through the dialogue of civilizations, is, are we forever bound with a static way of thinking about each other, or is it malleable and capable of positive and progressive change? History teaches us that it is capable of positive and progressive change when women and men of goodwill so make it. And that is where I see the future of this alliance of civilizations as lying. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, Prime Minister Kevin Rudd. And I learned another word that I will add to our lexicon today, sui. So we have umendad and sui today. And sui is the way we think about others in Chinese. Very inspirational. And the central idea that we would be discussing later is about the idea of the global citizens and the idea of religious traditions and the question of values, where we have more to agree on than more of differences, or more than differences. So we also talk about identity and how difficult and divisive is identity has become today, which is quite ironic, because we live in a world where it's basically multicultural, multi-ethnic, multilingual, and multiracial. So we go back to the idea of global citizen and global citizenship later as we start our discussions. I would like to move to our next speaker. And our next speaker is His Excellency Mr. Amr Moussa, who joined the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Egypt in 1958. But then he is no stranger to the United Nations and the United Nations system and mindset, because he served at the permanent mission of Egypt here in New York from 1958 to 1972. But also, Mr. Amr Moussa and I have to put now my national, perhaps my national hat when I speak about His Excellency Mr. Amr Moussa, because we look up at him in Egypt as a brilliant, or one of the most brilliant foreign ministers in Egypt. But in addition to being a foreign minister in Egypt from 1991 to 2001, in May 2001, he was also appointed as the Secretary General of the League of Arab States. The floor is yours.
شكرا لهذه المقدمة، وأبدأ بأن أتوجه بالشكر إلى أخي ناصر الناصر، الممثل السامي لتحالف الحضارات، لدعوتي للمشاركة في هذه القمة، وكذلك أهنئه على إنجازاته على رأس هذا التحالف في السنوات الخمس أو الست الماضية. الحقيقة أن هناك تصورات مختلفة فيما يتعلق بحالة العلاقة بين الحضارات. أنا مواطن مصري أشعر بأني نتاج لتزاوج حضارات عديدة وكثيرة، وربما هذا يشكل الشخصية المصرية مختلفة عن شخصيات وقوميات أخرى عديدة. مصر نتاج للحضارة الفرعونية بمختلف تفريعاتها، ثم هي نتاج للتزاوج مع الحضارات المتوسطية اليونانية والرومانية، ثم هي نتاج لتفاعل الأديان من الدين اليهودي إلى المسيحية إلى الإسلام. ولد الدين اليهودي في مصر، وتحرك المسيح إلى مصر هربا من الطغيان والظلم، ثم كان هذا التفاعل العميق بين الإسلام والثقافة المصرية. أن يشعر مواطن أو إنسان بأنه نتاج لكل هذه الحضارات تزاوجا وتفاعلا، الإسلام والمسيحية، حضارة البحر المتوسط وحضارات الصحراء، وجود الكنيسة الأرثوذكسية الرئيسية في الإسكندرية، وجود الأزهر في القاهرة، المعابد اليهودية الأنيقة التي بنيت في نهايات القرن التاسع عشر وأوائل القرن العشرين. كل هذا يجعلني كمواطن مصري وآخرين مثلي في هذه القاعة أؤمن بأن حوار الحضارات، أي التعايش بين الحضارات، التفاعل بين الحضارات، أمر مهم للغاية ورئيسي خصوصا في ظروفنا هذه. إنما هل الحوار بين الحضارات منتج لنتائج تأكيد التعايش فيما بينها؟ أنا بعتقد نعم، لا بد من أن نحقق التعايش بين هذه الحضارات على أساس التفاعل بين هذه الحضارات والعيش المشترك ومواجهة المشاكل التي يواجهها العالم نحن جميعا، بصرف النظر عن الأديان، الثقافات والتاريخ. ذكر في الكلمات الافتتاحية، أشير إلى مشاكل مثل المناخ، مشاكل التنمية، مشاكل السلام. هذه كلها نحن نواجهها كمواطنين وكأعضاء في الجماعة الإنسانية، بصرف النظر عن مختلف الاختلافات الأخرى التي أشير إليها. إنما لا بد في رأيي أن ننطلق من قاعدة الصراحة. الصراع بين الحضارات قائم ومستمر ونشط، وليس وليد السنوات الأخيرة بعد ظهور نظرية هانتينغتون عن صراع الحضارات. هذا أمر قديم، وحتى الآن هناك الحضارات التي تعمل على تحقيق السيطرة على العالم، وحضارات تستهدف تحقيق أكبر قدر من الثروة وعناصر القوة، وحضارات تقوم على رد الفعل إزاء محاولات التهميش والإفقار التي تتعرض له. ولم يحدث حتى الآن اختراق لهذا الوضع الخطير. إن الخرق يتسع لأن المصالح تتناقض، وحدث تداخل بين موضوع الحضارات وموضوع الثقافات وموضوع المصالح العالمية. المصالح أصبح لها الغلبة على موضوع الحضارات وموضوع الثقافات، ودخلنا في مرحلة من الاضطراب الدولي المؤثر قطعا على حالة الاستقرار في العالم، ويشكل بلغة الأمم المتحدة تهديدا للسلم والأمن الدوليين. طبعا نحن جميعا نتفق، نحن في هذا المجتمع، مجتمع الدول وممثلي الدول ومثقفوها وفقهاءها ورجال الدين فيها ورجال الفلسفة والفكر إلى آخره، نحن نفهم هذا الكلام. إنما هل وصلنا إلى أقاصي النجوع والكفور والقرى والجزر حتى نتحدث إلى المواطن العالمي؟ إذا كان العالم النهاردة أكثر من 7 مليار نسمة، ما هو العدد المهموم فعلا بموضوع الحضارات وصراعها والحوار فيما بينها؟ عدد قليل. أنا بعتقد بضرورة الحركة على الطبيعة. مثل هذا الاجتماع جيد ووجود الشباب جيد، ووجود الشباب مهم جدا، وإنما يجب أن نذهب إلى حيث يوجد أو حيث لا يوجد الكتاب ولا العلم ولا النصح. يجب أن نذهب إليهم، لأنه العالم بالفعل داخل في مرحلة صدام، احنا بنسميها صدام الحضارات، إنما هو صدام على أسس، على أساليب الحياة وإدارة الحياة. احنا فوجئنا في السنوات الأخيرة بتزايد، تصاعد درجة الصدام الحاصل في أوروبا، وتيار الشعوبية ورفض الآخر وقفل الأبواب في مواجهة الآخر يرفع علامة استفهام. الحاصل في للروهينجا في بعض أركان آسيا، هل هذا معقول؟ ويتصاعد ويتزايد فقط لأنهم ينتمون إلى ثقافة أو إلى دين معين. هل هذا معقول؟ قوانين تصدر بتحديد المواطنة، هذا مواطن من الدرجة الأولى وهذا مواطن من الدرجة الثانية وهذا مواطن من الدرجة الثالثة طبقا لانتماءاتهم الدينية. هل هذا معقول؟ وده حصل إمتى؟ متى حدث كل ذلك؟ حدث في الشهور والسنوات الأخيرة، أي في نفس السنوات التي نتحدث فيها نحن عن حوار الحضارات. الحقيقة أنه هذه الأحداث الجديدة تطرح تحديات جديدة، ولذلك أعتقد أنه ما تم إنجازه في السنوات الأخيرة شيء جيد جدا وكان ضروريا ومن الضروري أن يستمر. إنما بالنسبة للسنوات القادمة، يعني ال5 سنوات القادمة مثلا، لابد من خطة تأخذ في اعتبارها تصاعد التحدي للتعايش وفشل إدارة التنوع. إن إدارة التنوع في العالم تتجه نحو الفشل بسبب كراهية الآخر، بسبب النظرة السلبية التي تتصاعد في لدى كثير من الحضارات في التعامل مع الحضارات الأخرى. وأعتقد أنه الحوار لوحده لن يكون كافيا. يجب أن يدعم هذا الحوار بالنظام القانوني الدولي وبالإجراءات القسرية التي يجب أن تقف موقفا واضحا إزاء الخروقات الخطيرة لحالات التعايش والحوار والعلاقات السلمية بين الحضارات. أنا أعتقد أنه من الأهمية بمكان أن يكون هناك نوع من العلاقة القريبة بين تحالف الحضارات وبين مجلس الأمن، لأن ما يحدث في العالم والأمثلة أنا ذكرتها كلها تؤدي إلى تهديد السلم والأمن الدوليين. تهديد السلم والأمن الدوليين لم يصبح فقط لأن هناك قواعد عسكرية هنا أو لأن هناك تحالفات هناك، لا، لأن الحالة الثقافية أصبحت متردية، وأصبح هناك مجموعات كبيرة من الناس، ملايين الناس، مئات الملايين من الناس يعانون من القسر والقهر ومن إغلاق الأبواب أمامهم ومن الكراهية إزاءهم ومن إفشال حياتهم دون وجود التعاون المفترض المطلوب بين هذه الطبقات والدول عالية الثقافة وبين هؤلاء البؤساء الذين هم نتاج السياسات السيئة في الدول ذاتها أو في الدول التي بيدها مصير العالم. أنا بقترح في السنوات ال5 القادمة ضرورة دعوة مجلس الأمن ليكون جزء من نظر موضوع حوار الحضارات أو صراع الحضارات، وأن يكون الميثاق وما تحدث به من إجراءات قسرية إزاء التهديدات الموجهة للسلم والأمن الدوليين محل دراسة من التحالف ونقاش مع مجلس الأمن. شكرا.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, Mr. Amr Moussa, the former Secretary General of the League of Arab States. And I think the central idea here is that we have to go with dialogue to places where there is no education. And also your proposal for a solid plan to strengthen and support dialogue, and that is by inviting the Security Council or going to the UN Security Council to discuss the idea of dialogue or to look into the dialogue among civilizations. It is something similar to what we have heard earlier from His Excellency Prime Minister Zapatero when he said that perhaps we, Security Council, can discuss or address the idea of having the Alliance of Civilization act as a mediator or to undertake mediation tasks. Certainly an idea that we are going to be discussing or elaborate on how we could be doing that and whether this is possible or not in our round of discussions. And I would like to give the floor now to Her Excellency Under-Secretary General Ana Maria Menendez. Ms. Menendez is the Senior Advisor on Policy of the Secretary General, and but also before assuming her post, she brings a lot of experience, years of experience as a diplomat, an outstanding diplomat from Spain. We were particularly very proud when Under-Secretary General Menendez was announced by the Secretary General as his senior advisor on policy, because maybe Under-Secretary General Menendez was one of the first appointments that the Secretary General made, appointing a woman in a leading position. Hence, he was implementing what he outlined as a priority in his vision when he first took office, to bring parity to this organization, women taking leader positions in these organizations. We thank you for joining us here. We know how busy your schedule is, and I give you the floor.
Thank you very much. And Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I really feel very privileged to be in this panel with so many distinguished speakers. And I would like just to focus my intervention on the ideas, the thinking of the Secretary General on prevention and its links to the Alliance of Civilizations. The Secretary General, when he took office, he said, I have 3 priorities. and those are prevention, prevention, and prevention. And he sees prevention in broad terms, as crisis prevention, and not just as conflict prevention. And he also sees it as the shared responsibility of every actor in the UN system. It's not the sole preserve of those who work on conflict or on natural disasters. The nature of the responsibility, of course, varies with the mandates, presence, capacity, and resources. But why does the Secretary General take such a broad view? This is because, as you know, before being Secretary General, he was the High Commissioner for Refugees for 10 years. And there, in that capacity, he had the opportunity to witness firsthand the depth and breadth of human suffering. And he saw how avoidable and how costly it was. Those resources that could have gone to sustainable development had to go instead to respond to crises. And he also witnessed how increasingly linked the causes of crisis are. So take, for example, climate change that amplifies the risk of drought, forced migration, instability, and terrorism, for example, or discrimination, injustice, exclusion, and inequality increase the risk of social instability, or intolerance, hate speech, fuel fear and polarization, driving communities apart. And women, and I will go back to the point of women that you also mentioned, because this is very important. When women are not treated equally, progress towards prosperity and stability is undermined for all, and the young, the youth. When young people lack hope and opportunity, the future of an entire society is shakier. And where religious and cultural divisions are exploited for political gain, the resulting tensions can spiral out of control very quickly. Madame, Messieurs, la vision du secrétaire général sur la prévention est guidée par la reconnaissance de ces liens ainsi que le besoin de les affronter d'une manière coordonnée. L'idée que les gens et les peuples doivent unir leurs efforts pour faire face aux problèmes communs est au cœur de cette vision. Cette réunion est précisément un exemple de cette vision car elle est fondée sur une culture de tolérance, dialogue, inclusion et compréhension mutuelle. Les attitudes fondées sur eux contre nous sont contre-productives pour tous dans un monde où les risques sont partagés et les problèmes interconnectés. C'est la raison pour laquelle le mandat de l'Alliance des civilisations est tellement important. Aujourd'hui, plus que jamais. Parce que ce mandat nous permet de confronter les causes profondes de la polarisation et l'extrémisme, ainsi que l'établissement des points de convergence et de dialogue entre les sociétés diverses. La programación de la Alianza de Civilizaciones en el área de la promoción intercultural, del diálogo intercultural e interreligioso es un arma muy poderosa, un instrumento muy poderoso para la construcción de sociedades cohesionadas e inclusivas. Hay un elemento, como he mencionado antes, esencial en el pensamiento del secretario general sobre la prevención. No podemos enfrentarnos a los problemas de una manera eficaz si excluimos a la mitad de la sociedad. Sin mujeres no hay prevención, sin mujeres no hay alianza de civilizaciones. El secretario general ha reiterado en múltiples ocasiones que necesitamos ver más mujeres en el proceso de toma de decisiones. Y precisamente porque él sabe esto y sabe que los esfuerzos tienen que empezar siempre en casa propia, él avanzó desde el principio una estrategia de paridad de género y nombró a muchas mujeres a los niveles más altos de la organización. También ha dejado muy claro el secretario general que espera que las Naciones Unidas sean capaces de alcanzar a otros actores esenciales, como la juventud, la sociedad civil, las organizaciones basadas en la fe, el sector privado. Y también nos ha dicho que debemos colocar a los actores locales en el corazón de la prevención y de la agenda de prevención. Porque estos actores están mucho más cerca de los problemas y mucho más involucrados en su resolución. Estamos hablando de las instituciones nacionales, los grupos de la sociedad civil, incluyendo a las organizaciones de mujeres, líderes religiosos, jóvenes activistas e incluso, como hemos dicho también, el sector privado. Y hablábamos de humildad. Y las Naciones Unidas también tienen que ser humildes en la apreciación de qué es lo que realmente aportan, de cuál es su valor añadido. Y muchas veces nuestra fuerza mayor, nuestra fuerza más grande, es nuestra capacidad de ser un actor que convoca a otros para el diálogo. Por eso estoy muy satisfecha de ver que todos estos temas están en la agenda que vamos a discutir en esta importante reunión y creo que esta discusión ya está resultando, pero va a resultar todavía más estimulante e inspiradora. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Excellency Under-Secretary General Ana Maria Menendez. We get back to a few points that you've mentioned regarding the prevention agenda of the Secretary General. I will start now a round of questions to the panelists, and perhaps if we have time, I will take some questions or commentaries from the floor. But I will start first by this round of questions to our distinguished speakers, and I would like to start with a question directed to His Excellency Prime Minister Zapatero, because you mentioned actually in your speech very important points, but I want to go back and allude again to what I referred to at the beginning, to the year 2005, on that flight to the New York, when you thought about the idea, you presented it in the 59th session of the General Assembly. You had the support that day, I believe, of 80 countries in 2005. The first global forum of the Alliance of Civilization was kicked off in Madrid. Spain hosted the first Alliance of Civilization forum. And it was quite significant because also at that day, the idea moved from just being an idea in 2005 to a reality. Today, we are, instead of 80 members, we are 146 members of the group of friends. So we have increased the members of the Alliance of Civilizations. But I would like to ask you really a question that we have been also asking ourselves at the Alliance over the years. There has been skepticism about the Alliance of Civilizations as an idea, despite the fact that there were 80 members who joined in 2005 or supported the idea in 2005. Now, more than 12 years on, do you think that this skepticism still exists, given the financial challenges that the Alliance of Civilizations is encountering and has been encountering and is still encountering over the years, which pose a serious obstacle to achieving the mission and the objectives of the Alliance of Civilizations? Do you still think that this skepticism exists, and that's why we do not see member states forthcoming? Because you called at the end of your speech that member states should be supporting the Alliance of Civilization as an institution of societies.
Dos reflexiones, ¿no? No debe sorprender que una idea se pueda gestar, pueda nacer una idea de un primer ministro volando en un avión, porque la mayoría del tiempo estamos volando en un avión, entonces es normal que las ideas se puedan ocurrir ahí. Pero la idea fue fruto del diálogo, como todas las ideas fecundas, porque estábamos en una conversación en el avión con el ministro Moratinos y con más colaboradores. Y debo decir cuál es la raíz de la idea, ¿no? 2004, año 2004. Recordarán que España sufre un gravísimo atentado del terrorismo radical islamista. Después del de las Torres Gemelas, el más grave, 11 de marzo del 2004, casi 200 muertos, bombas en trenes de trabajadores, un gran golpe para mi país, y 3 días después de ese atentado soy elegido presidente del Gobierno de España. Y la gran aportación que hace España tras ese atentado es que los valores de la convivencia, del respeto a la identidad religiosa, se mantienen vivos y promovimos una especie de pequeña alianza de civilizaciones en mi país con una fundación que denominamos Pluralismo y Convivencia. En esa fundación sentamos a todas las confesiones religiosas y había una colaboración de las confesiones religiosas minoritarias, la mayoritaria es obviamente la católica, que fue extraordinariamente positiva y enriquecedora. Es decir, y uno vive la experiencia de que si hay diálogo, empeño y convicción, puede evitarse el peor conflicto. Pero ahora les diré a esta sala que hay muchas personas que nunca han estado en gobiernos, que no han sido políticos. Yo he estado en los sitios donde se toman las decisiones, en el puente de mando, en decisiones sobre guerra o paz, en decisiones sobre intervenciones militares o no. Todas las que he conocido en mis 8 años de presidente de gobierno, todas las intervenciones, alguna la apoyé, la mayoría no, han sido un desastre, un gigantesco desastre, en términos de vidas humanas, en términos de destrucción de países y en términos de dejar cráteres de odio en amplias regiones. Por tanto, hay que poner más empeño en favor de la paz y de evitar conflictos. Muchos de los conflictos, muchas de las guerras que hemos vivido, de las que estamos viviendo ahora, son fruto en gran medida de la falta de compromiso, de la falta de responsabilizarse por parte del conjunto de la comunidad internacional y también de desconocimiento. Esta es mi experiencia y por eso me motivé extraordinariamente a poder promover una asamblea como esta, un foro que diera ese nuevo enfoque. Y no tenga ninguna duda, cualquier conflicto se puede evitar. Esta es mi experiencia. Cualquier conflicto se puede terminar con el diálogo. esta institución, que debe tener más de unidad que de naciones, es la institución del diálogo por naturaleza. La política es diálogo. Y si se llega a la afirmación de que no se puede dialogar, ya no es política, es antipolítica. Por eso es esencial que los países financien la alianza de civilizaciones. El presupuesto no es que sea austero, es, en fin, casi mínimo. Y hago un llamamiento y, por supuesto, hay que apoyar que los gobiernos incrementen la financiación. La mejor inversión de recursos es la que salva vidas. En 8 años de presidente del Gobierno tomé muchas decisiones, aprobé muchas leyes, pero lo más importante que quedó en mi memoria de mi tarea fue el fin de la violencia de un grupo terrorista llamado ETA que había matado a 1000 personas casi en España. Eso fue lo que quedó como más importante, porque sabía que cada día que pasaba de futuro ya no habría ninguna familia llorando, ninguna historia desgarrada, ningún futuro perdido. Y créanme, por eso creo en la política y sobre todo creo en Naciones Unidas. Créanme que la paz se puede alcanzar, aún en las situaciones más difíciles. Y que cuando oigo a alguien, a un gobierno, a un político, a un periodista, que dice, no, mis principios no me permiten dialogar con esas posiciones, pues normalmente ya sé que estamos a las puertas de un conflicto, porque esa persona o ese gobierno no entiende cuál es la esencia última de la política. Es más, afirmaré, quien tiene la seguridad en sí mismo de las convicciones, de la paz, de los derechos humanos, de la democracia, de las libertades, debe demostrar su superioridad moral teórica, haciendo un gran esfuerzo de generosidad, de entender, de reconocer y no de condenar, juzgar o marginar. Hasta la cultura más pequeña, hasta la civilización menos desarrollada, hasta la religión minoritaria, hasta aquella que desgraciadamente da lugar a que en su nombre se mate a gente de la manera más triste e insólita. Cualquiera de esas voces merecen ser escuchadas, reconocidas. Y permítame que les diga, con el diálogo se puede alcanzar casi todo. Solo exige una condición: creer en él. Gracias.
Thank you very much. So you have to believe in dialogue, and the lack of commitment is also one of the obstacles to strengthening and promoting and achieving dialogue and peaceful coexistence. In the Alliance of Civilizations also, we always say it's not a clash of civilizations, it's rather a clash of ignorance. And you said that there is a lack of knowledge, and so it is also a clash of ignorance. I want to follow up with Undersecretary General Ana Maria Menendez about a point that you have mentioned, which is any conflict can be avoided. Conflicts today, though, we have noticed, are different than the conflicts that we have known around which the UN system was built. We see that conflicts have become more linear. They are not always linear, as a matter of fact. Sometimes they are evolving in a way, and there is no beginning, there is no middle, and there is no end. And so maybe this also requires, as conflicts are new conflicts are evolving, and the conflicts themselves are evolving, perhaps that needs a new approach. And one of the Secretary General's new approaches is the surge in diplomacy, which he had announced in his first speech before the Security Council a couple of years ago. Do you think that conflicts really can be avoidable, and a surge in diplomacy is something which would suffice to resolve conflicts?
Thank you very much. Yes, indeed, the Secretary General talked at the beginning when he took office about the search on diplomacy for peace. And that's a very important element in the prevention of crisis and obviously the prevention of conflict. Is not the only element, and that's the reason why I was explaining before that the thinking of the Secretary General on the issue of crisis and conflict prevention is really complex, in the sense that there are many elements. He himself said that one of the most important instruments that we have to prevent crisis and conflict is the SDGs and the Agenda 2030, because arguably, if we were able to reach these objectives by 2030, most of the underlying root causes of crisis and conflict would have been, avoided and averted. So it's a very complex issue that has many pillars and tools. But certainly, the Secretary General, if I focus now on the issue of a search on diplomacy for peace, he has himself and through his special envoys, his special representatives, and actually all of us in the United Nations really made a huge efforts on trying to solve conflicts, also trying to at least, if not solve them, because as you said very well, many of them are very complex and there are many elements involved, also at least mitigate and try to really make the suffering of the people we serve less. And he has himself, of course, engaged in good offices, many of which, of course, are very discreet, and I will not dwell into that. But he also, in the field of mediation, he established a high-level advisory board on mediation, which eminent personalities that are, by the way, it's a parity panel with equal number of women and men, and representing all the different regions in the world. And these advisory boards are also engaged in the kind of good offices, etc. And there is, of course, something that I would like to insist once more, because this is very important, which is the participation of women in preventing and solving conflicts. Yeah. And we know that peace agreements are 30% more sustainable if there are women involved. The Secretary General has insisted, and also his special envoys and representatives, to have always a representation of women in peace talks, such as, for example, in Syria or in Libya and others. And I think that there are, of course, very good examples of involvement of women, such as Colombia. And we think that is very important that women are really represented, because it's the only way we have to make sure that conflicts and crises can be preserved. The role of women in dialogue, in intercultural and interreligious dialogue, the role of women in preventing violent extremism is really fundamental. And we are really doing efforts, himself, of course, the Secretary General, our leader, but all of us, in really trying to have this component, this gender component all across the board, because we think that this is very important. Finally, just not to really take the floor for long, but just to say that the Secretary General has undertaken a process of reforms. And this is not just reform for the sake of reform. It's not reform for simply savings. It's just a reform which goes to us the United Nations being able to work better. Because, as I said, I think that there are many capacities in the system, but we are not all the time able to act in an integrated, coordinated manner that is essential if we will really want to be better at conflict prevention and resolution. And also because there is the issue of partnerships, how to network better with governments, with civil society, with organizations in order to prevent conflict and crisis. So I would say that this is a very complex tool of toolbox. But of course, the idea of a sort of diplomacy on peace is very important. We are on it, but there are many others. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So I would like to turn to Mr. Danilo Turk, and you mentioned how we can manage the importance of managing diversity. But also, I would like to touch with you on that point that has been raised by at least two of our speakers today, President Zapatero and also by Mr. Amr Moussa. They both said or proposed the idea of going to the Security Council with the Alliance of Civilizations, and you you have served when you were here as a permanent representative of your country, Slovenia, in the United Nations. You were a non-permanent member of the Security Council. Slovenia was a non-permanent member of the Security Council. Is there an added value of going to the Security Council? Do you think this would help instruments and mechanism aside of how we get there with the Alliance of Civilization? What would be the added value?
I think that the answer to this question depends on how it is done. I think it could be done. Now, you asked me about my experience. Now, that experience is by now almost 20 years old, and things have changed since then. But I remember 20 years ago, my delegation suggested that prevention should be put as a theme on the agenda of the Security Council. Now, this is not revolutionary, really, because the whole United Nations system and the work of the Security Council is designed to serve prevention. It is not only about conflict management or ending conflicts or peacekeeping and other instruments that have been developed over time, but it has, from the original design of the United Nations, been about prevention. So the question is, how do we define the prevention agenda? How good we are in dealing this? What do we define as appropriate for the Security Council? And where the Security Council can be actually helpful as a body that inspires others. Because Security Council cannot do everything, but it can dramatize a problem and explain that there is a problem which requires more serious attention, that it's more dramatic, and therefore that it should be brought to the agenda of the United Nations more broadly. If somebody asked me back in 1998 if I would see the problem of violence against women as a major item on the agenda of the United Nations, I would say, well, as things stand now, probably not, because the Security Council was totally focused on the specific crisis situations, and even to bring a theme like prevention to it was not easy. But we have seen that over time this has changed. And while the Security Council cannot be expected to produce all the results, let alone make miracles, this discussion is very important because it's very empowering, and the constituency for protection of women in armed conflict has become much larger and has, I think, merged with another broad constituency, which is about equality of women, respect for women in society, and so on. So in a way, I think that the question of respecting the others and prevention of discriminatory practices or violent practices that lead to further tension and then armed conflict could be put on the agenda, provided that the right way is found. But I would like to say that obviously Security Council is never alone. There is General Assembly, which has a wonderful article, Article 14, which allows the Assembly to take up any question which it deems that it might lead to, friction in the future and suggest solutions. And that authority is not used. Maybe a combination of Security Council and the Assembly can be helpful. But then my final point is this. You see, United Nations has been established in a very different era than ours. And of course, we suffer certain shortcomings as a result. The time of the establishment of the United Nations was not the time of internet and globalized communication. And the United Nations has sadly remained rather weak when it comes to telling stories, providing good narratives, making good and powerful messages. Now, this is a shortcoming which we have never been able to overcome. And now we hear, from experts, from people from Massachusetts Institute of Technology and other leading scientific institutions of the world, that in 5 to 10 years, the whole world, every square inch of the world will be covered by internet signal as a result of low orbit satellites which are now being put in space. That's what I heard. I believe it is true because it came from serious authorities. Now, what kind of world will that be? Who is going to dominate the messages? Who is going to mobilize people? The United Nations is not well prepared for this kind of work. And this, I think, is another reason why it is so important to use the United Nations convening power and bring together a broader constituency, especially young constituency. I'm very happy to see so many young people in the room today. Let them think about all this. You are here for a meeting which has its limits, but your mind has no limits. You are much more powerful than the gathering in which you are represented. Bring narratives about alliance of civilizations in new ways. Use the UN simply as a place to meet, but then use your imagination, your knowledge, your skills for greater good. That's the way to do good as opposed to only feeling good. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Apart from doing good, and this is, of course, something that is very encouraging and that everyone should be doing, but that does not mean that we are not all feeling good. We are all feeling good. So, at least today, at this moment. So thank you. And you mentioned our youth, and we have indeed, for all our participants and for our speakers to know, we have almost 110 UNAOC youth alumni. These youth alumni have benefited from our project activities, either through seed funding or through mentorship and workshops on capacity building skills and peace building skills and prevention skills. So we thought that we are always doing regular meetings here at the United Nations, and we'll talk about all those projects, but this is perhaps the first time we said maybe because we are doing this forum here in the headquarters, we would bring them in a session and they will be telling member states how they benefited and how they developed their skills in peace building and in prevention through the projects that UNAOC is really the projects that the United Nations is supporting them with. So I would like them all to stand there. They are in this side of the room. Can you please stand up and let's encourage this young generation who are going to be the leaders of tomorrow. Thank you very much, and we all look forward to attending the session that you will have from 3 to 6 today in this room, where you are going to be discussing a number of issues relevant to peace building and to prevention. Thank you very much for being here, and we all look forward to those fruitful discussions. I would like to move now to another question, Mr. Kevin Rudd. You mentioned the number of very interesting issues But at the same time, I would like to see how the different dynamics and the different nature of conflicts that we have all seen requires a different set of tools and different set of approaches as well. But maybe one of the interesting things that you have said was that the international relations is not, you do not agree with the notion that international relations is all about national interests. No, it is also about values, dialogue, and this makes us all reflect. Is it really about, it's not about national interests. Maybe that applies to certain organizations like the United Nations Alliance of Civilizations as a UN organization. But do you believe that this is actually something that we can apply to other international organizations, particularly those within the UN system?
Thank you. In answering that question, if I could add something to what Danilo just said a minute ago to all the young people who are here. Good to have you in New York. I hope you have a great time. Don't party too much. Just enough, okay?
They don't have time, we keep them busy.
Yeah, my experience of young people is they always got time to party. Maybe that's just in Australia. So but what Danilo said to you before is a really good and practical challenge for what we're doing here today. And that is you're all social media whizzes, each and every one of you, okay? And you can navigate the social media space in a very, very effective way. What are we all hearing around the world today? And there's data to back it up, that social media is being used and abused to promote intolerance, hatred, conflict, and war. And there are a few folks who do that with passion and commitment. There are a lot of bots that do it because they've been pre-programmed to do it. But each of you are the custodians of a story or a set of stories from your communities where people actually work together across different cultural and religious boundaries to achieve common good. Now, as Danilo said before, the world needs to hear those stories. We need to build an alliance of stories which are about the common good, about respect, about common projects together, about making your communities better. And you're going to do that in a far more creative way than the Department of Information here at the UN, with all due respect to the Department of Information Communications at the UN. And you know something? You can establish a global movement along those lines. Back in Australia, there's a group called Global Citizen. They've since gone global, and they're now based here in New York. They organise that huge thing that happens at Central Park each year in support of the Sustainable Development Goals. They're run by two young Australian kids who started out in their 20s, and they've now gone global. They've got about 40 million followers. You know, tune into some of the things that they do to promote cross-cultural, cross-religious, interfaith, intercultural activity, which solves local problems, regional problems, global problems together, whether it's on climate, whether it's on sustainability, whether it's on peace and security and the rest. Because you taking to the airwaves, ultimately, when I show the digital waves, drowns out the others. Because you have the force of numbers and the power of your stories. The other thing I'd simply say is in terms of the applicability of the principles of the Alliance to other institutions of the United Nations, there's one I'd like to bring particular attention to, and that is the work done through the United Nations for the indigenous peoples of the world. We've spoken before about decolonisation. We've spoken before about the applicability of the human rights provided for in the Universal Declaration of 48 to all peoples, whatever their race, whatever their gender, whatever their sexuality, and whatever part of the world they happen to come from. Now, there is a group of peoples, 320 million of them across the world, who are this world's first peoples, the indigenous peoples. And these folk and I've spoken in this assembly hall, addressing them from time to time, are in particular need of the work of our intercivilizational, intercultural dialogue. The reason I say that is that to tell a very simple local Australian story about reconciliation with our First Peoples, Aboriginal peoples. As Prime Minister of Australia, I delivered Australia's first formal apology for 200 years of white oppression of Indigenous Australians. We were 200 years late. It took a long time. Us white folks were pretty slow. We often are. But we got there in the end. What is one of the core principles of that form of reconciliation? And it has a lot to do with traditions of religion and culture as well. And it is simply the act of saying sorry, the act of apology, of reconciliation and forgiveness. We've seen this in South Africa, we've seen it in other countries as well. It applies to Indigenous peoples most acutely. And so when we think about how the principles of intercivilizational dialogue apply across the work of the United Nations family, do not forget the importance of our First Peoples if you come from countries where there are such communities still today. The final point is this: reconciliation is one thing, but being practical about it is the other part as well. In other words, closing the gap between our First Peoples, wherever they are, and those who have come often from settler communities in subsequent centuries and generations. This is the business, the hard business of social justice as well. So in answer to your question about how does it apply more broadly, recommendations have been made already about the use and drawing upon the expertise of this institution for the mediation purposes of the United Nations. The UN Secretary-General has established a panel of mediators. Drawing upon the expertise of this group in that respect can be helpful. I would also suggest, however, that more broadly in the information war in which we are all engaged to promote peace, to promote cooperation, to promote reconciliation, you folk taking to social media is absolutely critical. And on the way through, do not forget, please, the Indigenous peoples of the world.
Thank you. Well, the use of new technologies and social media and the new media platforms that are evolving by the day is one of the issues that is being addressed by the United Nations Alliance of Civilizations. Media is one of our 4 pillars, and rightly so. It is more relevant today than ever before, when the high-level group identified media as one of the 4 pillars for the Alliance of Civilizations. Media is very much could be risky, but at the same time it could be used responsibly and positively in order to convey a positive message of coexistence and peace. I want to ask Mr. Amr Moussa a question in order to wrap up this discussion. You mentioned also something about the clash of civilizations, which existed even before the Huntington theory of the clash of civilization, a very controversial theory, though. And as I mentioned to President Zapatero, that we would like to think that it is not a clash of civilizations, but it's a clash of ignorance and a clash of the lack of knowledge. Mr. Moussa, you were one of the officials that attended the launch of the Alliance of Civilizations, or the global forum, the first global forum of the Alliance of Civilizations back in Madrid. You were one of the speakers at that time. How do you see the Alliance of Civilizations today, more than 10 years onwards? Do you see that this very young initiative that kicked off in Madrid has now been growing and achieving results and moving forward with its objectives?
Yes, I remember those days and the beginning of this very important endeavor. I continue to believe, as I said before, in the usefulness of this alliance of civilizations. But my point is that the road is very, very, very long still. And that the clash of civilization continues to exist. It happens that I've had a long discussion with the late Samuel Huntington in Davos on his theory. I said, yes, I believe in the existence of clash of civilizations. But you did not talk about clash of civilizations, you talked particularly about the clash with Islam. He said, no. Yes, I know that, but I really, if this is the case, I do apologize. Now, it was general in my view that it was clash of civilizations. I said, yes, it came also after the demise of the Soviet Union and the need to have an enemy somewhere in order to shoot at and mobilize in fear of some other power. Clash of civilizations is not the result of ignorance or is not as a result of ignorance alone. It is being managed knowingly in so many circles. And that goes in accordance with the interests at a certain moment, certain era, certain time. It is not ignorance. It is sometimes premeditatingly done. That is why I call for the involvement, the engagement of a body, important international body like the Security Council. What is going on in Myanmar with the Rohingya is a crime against humanity. It cannot and should not be left to, and then we tell, okay, let us talk. The dialogue between us perhaps will convince you. It is too late to convince them. No, there must be international law has to be applied. How could it be applied? How would it be applied except by the involvement of the Security Council and a clear-cut position taken by the Council can do it. So, sometimes the Security Council fails all of us in the way they deal with the problems of menacing, threatening international peace and security. But I think that, and that was the essence of one of your questions, I believe the one that was addressed to Kevin, not only the Security Council, there are other issues. The Economic and Social Council, in following the 2030 plan for development, the Council on Human Rights, etc., all the bodies will have to be involved. The Alliance of Civilizations should be a focal point that invites, that draws the attention of other branches, other councils, other committees of the United Nations system. So why is the United Nations there except for to deal with such things? And I insist on what I've said, that now the clash of civilizations and the events that we see in several countries, several societies, emphasizing knowingly the supremacy of one civilization over the other, etc., this thing will have to be put before the international community, not from a religious point of view or the point of view of a debate just for the sake of debate. No, to address it, and address it because several communities are really suffering from the consequences of this clash of civilizations and the clash of cultures.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Musa. And I would like to give the floor for the last time. This is the last question, actually, because we are running out of time. It's 4 minutes to 1 to His Excellency President Zapatero. And I want to ask you a question. When you mentioned that in 2004, the idea about the alliance started as a small alliance of pluralism and coexistence that included all religions. We've come a long way from that small alliance to where we are now. I would like to, and I'm sure that all the audience would like to hear from you, your view of how far we have achieved now at the Alliance of Civilizations more than 12 years on. How do you see it now? And I'm sure that the Alliance is close to your heart and you are following us all the time.
Gracias. En mi intervención inicial en la tribuna dije que la Alianza de Civilizaciones era un proyecto, como se ha recordado aquí, a largo plazo, que trataba ante todo de unir en la sede de la paz, en la sede que tiene encomendada la tarea de la paz, que es Naciones Unidas, a sociedad civil, universidades e instituciones en favor de una idea común, donde se encontraran todo tipo de orígenes religiosos, culturales y civilizatorios. Es decir, Naciones Unidas tiene como misión la paz en el Consejo de Seguridad cuando casi siempre ya la cosa es inevitable. O se ha producido una intervención o se quiere que se produzca. Sin embargo, la Alianza de Civilizaciones permite esa tarea preventiva, educadora, constructiva. El Consejo de Seguridad a veces tiene que enviar tropas, soldados, cascos azules. La Alianza de Civilizaciones lo que tiene son cascos blancos. Es decir, únicamente la fuerza de la palabra, de la convicción y de la pasión. Cuando en la Asamblea General propuse una alianza de civilizaciones que demostrara al mundo que nos queremos, seamos musulmanes, católicos, budistas, orientales, occidentales, o que no nos consideremos más que personas, nos queremos, compartimos casi todo, salvo que nos tenemos que sentar a vernos, a mirarnos, para interiorizar esa tarea. No pude pensar nunca que cuando lancé esa idea, en 2004, 14 años después, íbamos a estar aquí, en este foro, consumada, un proyecto puesto en pie y como en fin, tengo cierta experiencia, pues sé que, lo dije antes, esta es una institución joven, no aspira a ser protagonista en los medios de comunicación porque las noticias que va a dar son todas polite, ¿no? Son todas noticias soft y por tanto eso tiene menos impacto, salvo que el Consejo de Seguridad algún día le encargue tareas de mediación. Pero el que tenga menos impacto mediático no quiere decir que no tenga más raíces a largo plazo. Yo al ver la sala hoy pensaba, digo, qué red más poderosa, además más plural, porque bueno, hay parlamentarios, hay universitarios, hay organizaciones internacionales, hay gobiernos, hay fundaciones, ¿no? ¿Qué suma, qué mezcla más rica para poder tener la información, el contacto, el conocimiento, el enriquecimiento y saber, cogiendo el mapa del mundo que debería presidir todas las salas de Naciones Unidas, dónde tenemos que juntos poder hacer esa tarea. Por tanto, claro, me siento muy feliz y creo que la Alianza de Civilizaciones va a desarrollar una gran tarea, está desarrollando una gran tarea. Yo vuelvo a rendir homenaje a quienes han tenido la valentía de liderar. Lo más importante, lo más difícil en la vida son los primeros años. La mortalidad infantil es la mayor siempre. Eso es lo difícil, empezar una tarea. se ha empezado, se ha consolidado y ahora mi pronóstico, mi vaticinio es que esto va a ser una de las grandes referencias en los próximos años, una de las grandes referencias de Naciones Unidas. Gracias.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Thank you. I would like, we have to wrap it up. I would like to thank our distinguished speakers, His Excellency Mr. José Luis Rodríguez Zapatero, the former Prime Minister of Spain. I'd like to thank His Excellency Mr. Daniel Turk, former President of Slovenia, His Excellency Mr. Kevin Rudd, the former Prime Minister of Australia, and His Excellency Mr. Amr Moussa, Secretary General of the former Secretary General of the Arab League, and Her Excellency Under Secretary General Ana Maria Menendez. I would like to ask you all to join me in applauding our distinguished speakers.